Hey, what's going on, everybody? Manny here once again. Welcome to DFS Zone. We got week 2 of the NFL season. We got running backs. Let's talk about it. So week 2 is upon us here. We got another week of games coming up. Very interesting running backs. Going to talk about 2 running backs, but before I get started with those 2, like I said yesterday, I just want to be able to recap, just hold myself accountable for some of the picks I made. Last week, I had 2 selections at running back. I had Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers, and I also had Josh Jacobs of the Raiders that I shared with you guys. I did play those guys. I have 40% of my ownership of my running back position out of my lineups was pretty much Aaron Jones, who was having a fantastic first half. Then he pulled up lame, a little bit of a hamstring issue. Didn't play pretty much the second half, I guess, of that game. And he finished up fairly well. I mean, 25.7 FanDuel fantasy points, which is absolutely fantastic. He put up some really nice numbers, 9 rushes, 41 yards, and a touchdown. And he also had 3 targets. He got 2 receptions for 86 yards as he broke a big one, 1 TD. But again, 25.7, you can't go wrong. It would have been great if he would have been able to play the entire game. And who knows what he could have probably put up. He could have put up more, maybe another 10 more fantasy points. Josh Jacobs had a fairly good game. It's just not enough. His usage is good. I mean, this guy got 79.7% of the snaps, and he had 21 touches. So he got 19 carries and I think 2 receptions for 21 total touches. And that's absolutely what we want from a running back any given week. In a situation like this, it just unfortunately did not get enough in the red zone and enough opportunities in the red zone to score a touchdown. That's where Josh Jacobs is really good in the red zone. He can get in. So overall, I think he had a fine game, and just unfortunately, it wasn't enough fantasy points, for someone who's playing fantasy sports like we are. We need those running backs, and we need the players that we select to be able to put up fairly good numbers so that we can have a shot at making the prize money. So again, it's week 1. We'll see what happens. I think both guys are going to be Aaron Jones is more than likely going to be out this week, so that's going to be something to be looking out for. We don't know who's going to get more of the touches there. I mean, I'm not too fond of A.J. Dillon. He's not Aaron Jones, so he's more of a bruiser. He's not a guy that, he's just a run it up the gut, really just hammer the ball down. He's not like Aaron Jones, a little more athletic and so on and so forth. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But I am going to talk about 2 guys. As you can see here, first of all, first things first, at the top, obviously, there are some guys here at the top that you can pay up for if you wish to pay up at running back. I have no problems with McCaffrey in this matchup against the Rams. I think that he's in a good spot. Austin Eckler, that's a questionable situation right now with the ankle. If Austin Eckler is out, then even myself included, I'm going to have a little bit of Joshua Kelly in this matchup against Tennessee. Now, Tennessee in the past have been known to be pretty decent defensively against the run, but late last year, and looking at the statistics late last year and then so far to start off this year, they're not looking too good as far as stopping the run. So Kelly or Eckler will have definitely a pretty good game here if they're able to play. Now, again, that's the one to watch out for. If Eckler is out, then you definitely should tap in there and get a little bit of Joshua Kelly in your lineups. Barkley, I think, is someone you can consider as well. And then there's a few others that I'll talk about at the end. I got about 3 or 4 more guys that I'm actually looking at. But the 2 guys I am going to discuss, my first guy is David Montgomery. I like David Montgomery in this matchup. He is down here. He is priced really low at 6,300, but in a favorable matchup here against Seattle. Montgomery last week, as you can see, 74 rushes, 1 TD. He had 21 touches overall. Now, he's not a guy who's going to get a lot. He's not going to go out in the flats and be able to get some screens and get some balls, receiving wise. But he is a guy that runs well between the tackles, and he's very good in the red zone. So Montgomery here, I mean, he's going up against Seattle. Let's look at the numbers first, right? Game totals for this one, 51.5, and a team implied total of 28 for Detroit. They're favored at home by 5.5, at least at the moment. I think I last heard 6. But I think right, at least as far as when I researched this late last night, it was 5.5. Again, 21 carries, 74 yards in his last game. That was a 78.4% snap rate. And I look for stuff like that. I look for guys that are going to be getting usage, and he does get enough usage on this team. Now, granted, they got a rookie, Gibbs, who's going to be explosive, and he's probably going to be one that they're going to actually flare out and get him out in the out of the backfield and be able to run some patterns. But David Montgomery is going to be the guy that's going to be pretty much banging in through the tackles. But at that rate, man, he's going to be great. He also got 4 opportunities in the red zone for 24 carries. He did get 1 touchdown, so expect that. This is a guy that's going to get 18 to maybe as many as 22 touches a game in the backfield, especially if he is running really well between the tackles. He's going to get a lot of that. He has been always solid in the red zone. This is another reason why I like him in this matchup. He's facing a team that has been in trouble in the red zone since last season in Seattle. And on top of that, he has been a fairly good running back between the tackles in the red zone over his career, especially even when he was with Chicago. Last year was a terrible year that he was with, for the Bears, but he did have 31 carries in the red zone for 115 yards and 5 touchdowns. The year before that, the Bears were a little bit better offensively, and he was a little bit better as well. He had 43 carries in the red zone, 87 yards for 7 TDs. So again, at this price point, $6,300, with a guy that gets that kind of usage, and he's going to be in a lot of the snaps, and he is capable of putting the ball in the end zone, in the red zone, in a favorable matchup against a team like Seattle that's been really struggling. Now let's look at Seattle. Seattle week 1 versus the Rams. They allowed the 5th most fantasy points for the week for the opposing running backs with a 26.3 fantasy point total. That's pretty high. Allowed 81 rushes between Akers and Williams. And then last year, Seattle allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs at 24.9. They also were 6th most rushing yards given up entirely for the entire year to opposing running backs at 1,952 yards. And they finished 8th in the amount of touchdowns given up to running backs, which was a total of 8 touchdowns. So they've had their issues handling running backs. And I think David Montgomery is really, it looks like it's going to be a very important part of this offense for the Detroit Lions starting this year and moving forward for the remainder of the year. And it showed in game 1 here with him getting the touches that he got. So I expect that to continue. So again, this price point, I think is just fantastic. I think that he's definitely, you got to keep an eye on David Montgomery. If you're not on him right now, do a little bit more research. That's entirely up to you, but I think he's definitely an excellent opportunity here at 6,300. My next running back that I am looking at is right here for Tampa, and that's Rachaad White. Now, Rachaad White last year was, the RB2 for this team behind Leonard Fournette. Fournette is no longer there now. This is White's position to keep here. Now, he didn't have a great game last week, but what I'm looking at with this is the factors that even the year before that, he will get some touches in the backfield, and he will get some also as a receiver. And as you can see, no different here. He has 17 rushes for 39 yards, not a whole lot, but he did get 17 touches, and he did also get 2 targets, 2 receptions for 10 yards. They need to open that up a little bit more for Rachaad White, and he's in a matchup this week where he's going to be pretty good. So White is going up against Chicago. They have been horrific against running backs dating back since last year. But so far, this game here is a game total of 44. Now, granted, it's not a high scoring game, but it's considered a close game. The implied totals here is Tampa Bay favorite. The Tampa Bay right now is favored by 3, and they have a team total of 23.5 in this matchup here. So, it's going to be close, but it's perfect for where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers want to be at against the Bears here, is to be in a close game where you can be able to utilize that run game, open it up so you'll be able to go and get Godwin, of course, and Evans involved offensively with the receiving. But let's look a little bit more closely at this situation here. So Chicago, last week, they coughed up 32.5 fantasy points to opposing running backs in that game against the Aaron Jones, that what I spoke about, where Jones put up 41 yards rushing and also another 86 yards receiving with 2 touchdowns combined. Last year, Chicago allowed the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing running backs at 25.2 fantasy points per game. They also allowed the 3rd most yards per game to opposing running backs at 2,082 total for the year. They were 2nd in TDs allowed. They gave up 20 touchdowns to running backs last season. So again, just getting this man right here, White, involved with the pass game and the running game in between the tackles, there's a great opportunity for him to put up a 15, 20 fantasy point game and maybe even beyond that if the game stays close. And again, this is a game that both teams, especially Tampa, have already showed, and they have shown in the past, that they love to be a run, first offense, and then obviously if the run game starts opening up the passing game, that's what they prefer. So White getting some early touches, I do like White here a whole lot. Last year, okay, so going back, last year as a running back 2 behind Fournette, he finished, with 129 carries, 481 yards. He also had 50 receptions for 290 yards and 2 touchdowns. And again, this year, he is the guy. And like I said, if they can open up the doors and utilize him not only in the backfield, but also as a receiver, they're going to open up the doors for White and, of course, for that offense to be a lot more dangerous for Tampa Bay. So I do like this matchup. Chicago has been really struggling with against opposing running backs. Rachaad White is definitely another individual that you guys should be looking at a price point of $6,200. Not that bad at all. You can get one of these 2 guys, and if you wanted to pay up for McCaffrey or for someone else above at a high echelon level, then you can do that. Some other guys that I like, Zach Moss coming back now from injury for Indianapolis. I do like Moss in this matchup. He's going to get 15 to 20 touches as well. And Indy needs him because last week that Deion Jackson experiment did not work out. I had him as someone there that you guys can consider. Thank goodness I didn't play him a whole lot. I think I put him only like 1 or 2 lineups, and it didn't pan out well. But Deion Jackson was not the answer last week for the Colts. They definitely need Zach Moss. So I like Zach Moss here. Houston, last week, again, like I said, last week, Deion Jackson did not pan out. So Zach Moss in play. I think he's definitely someone to consider. Other than that, James Conner, and even going up and paying up high for, and that's a bit high, Saquon Barkley at $8,800. But I'm going to go Conner here. Conner, if he plays, right now he has a questionable, tag on him. But if he's able to play at home against the Giants, I think that's not a bad situation there for James Conner. $6,400 for him, a guy that gets a lot of usage as well, run the backfield as well as a receiver. The Giants last week gave up 19. This is a guy that gets 19 to 20 touches, and he also, not only that with Conner, he's got a usage rate of about almost 84% on this offense. So he is a big part of this offense right now for the Arizona Cardinals. And the Giants allowed 24.4 fantasy points to Tony Pollard last week in the Dallas Cowboys. Now, granted, that's the Dallas Cowboys and not the Arizona Cardinals, and I understand that fully. But James Conner is the kind of guy that he could be able to open up the doors if he gets out. If he could get in between the tackles and be able to get a couple run game going, then you could see him going out and receiving some passes as well. And what I like most about this whole situation is that the Giants have struggled so far with running backs, even dating to late last year. So this is not just a sample size of the 1 week against Dallas, which is a pretty good offense, but we're also talking about the previous 4 or 5 games dating back to last season. The Giants did struggle a little bit, especially with dual threat backs, guys that can get out the backfield and be able to catch and receive as well as run between the tackles. So I like that. I think James Conner is definitely someone to consider. Other than that, Travis Etienne is the only one up here on the top that I I was torn between him and Rachaad White, but I think I'm going to play them both in the same amount of lines. But Travis Etienne here, another guy, good usage rate. Kansas City last week allowed 20.4 fantasy points to Montgomery and gang with the Lions. Etienne, his usage rate was 80% of the snaps last week, so he definitely was involved, and they expect to get him involved in his offense. He's a very integral part. If they can continue to feed him and he does well between the tackles, that's going to open up the doors for that passing game as well. I think Jacksonville is going to get better and better and tougher offensively as the weeks go along. The only concern with Tampa and the Jags is the defense. Is the defense going to be able to hold down the better offensive teams to keep the Jaguars in winning some games? But I really think the Jaguars are going to play well this week. They're playing at home, and I also think that they might upset Kansas City as well. So I like the Jaguars this weekend. Travis Etienne is definitely someone you have to consider who gets, last week he got 23 touches, man, was involved in this offense. And I expect him to be no different this weekend, especially after what Detroit did with David Montgomery. I could see Etienne being able to do pretty much the same and maybe even more. So those are the guys I'm really looking at. Those are the 5 or 6. Etienne, Conner, Zach Moss. Look out for those guys. And then, of course, I do like Rachaad White for Tampa Bay. And, of course, David Montgomery for the Detroit Lions. And that's pretty much it, guys. I wish you guys a lot of luck, man. Drop a like, comment down below. Let me know what you think. of any of these guys, who you like, who you don't like. I mean, and other than that, man, I'll see you guys for tomorrow's wide receivers. And make sure you subscribe to the channel. Don't forget, all right? Peace out, everybody. Peace.